This is the Rio Grande podcast. Welcome home. Okay, so why you should love the Rio Grande Valley? Why should we love the Rio Grande Valley? And that's a tough one because there's so many angles, right, to take. There's so many ways to look at that conversation, that topic. And at first I was thinking, I'll be honest, more in terms of face value, right? Like if you're going to bring someone from out of town, where do you take them? Attractions, right? Things to do on a Friday night. But then I started to realize it goes deeper than that. I mean, when you think about, if you fall in love with someone, you're not falling in love with them because of the interesting things that they do or talents that they have. And those are definitely perks, right? And you're not going to be upset that, they got cool stuff going on, but that's not why you love them. It goes deeper into their heart, into who they are, into their personalities, right? You fall in love with them as a person. And then everything else kind of just makes it a little bit better. It should be the same thing, right, for the Valley. And it is the same thing for home, right? Why do you love home? And if you grew up here, I mean, that's one thing. If you grew up here, then this is where your journey started, right? No matter where you end up, the story always starts here. And there's a little bit of magic in that, right? I mean, that's going to follow you everywhere. The familiarity with the region, where you're at. That's the region. I mean, the area is changing, it's growing, but there's always going to be that sense of, okay, I'm a little more grounded here, right? Life is going crazy, but when I come back home, I can take a deep breath and I can figure things out here. I know myself here in this area. And if you grew up here, more than likely the majority of your family is here, right? Whether it's blood relatives or friends or family. And a lot of the times we're talking about childhood friends, right? People with deeper roots where you go way back with. And there's nothing like that, man. I mean, you meet a friend, you know him for a few years, and you think you got a pretty strong bond. Well, if you've got someone that you've been hanging out with since you were like 8 years old, that you don't find that anywhere else. You literally can't, because I mean that's built by time, right? And early experiences, memories that go way back. Those people are the people in those memories. They're the characters, right? And think about your fun childhood memories in school, right? Those schools were here, right? Those classrooms were here. Those kids grew up here, whether they're still living here or not. This is where it happened. Like we talked about the familiarity, you won't get lost. Whether or not that's literal, you might. I mean, like I said, it's growing. Just in the pandemic, for a little while, I didn't really go out much to like McAllen and other areas, Harlingen, and then we started driving around. Like, man, like when did these stores pop up? But still, I mean, you are gonna know where you're at. The valley is a huge part of who you are if you grew up here. I mean, think about the first day, freshman year of college, right? Syllabus day. Everyone's introducing themselves, going around the class. What's one of the things the professor asks you to mention, right? What's your name? What's your major? Where are you from? Right? That's one of those things that kind of tells your story, helps define you, right? My name is Sam. I'm from San Juan, Texas. I'm from here, right? Because I was in a classroom in Edinburgh at the university. But still, I mean, that's one of those things that, what do you do for a living? Where'd you grow up? Yeah, where are you from? That's never gonna change, right? If you grew up here, the valley, the sights, the smells, that's gonna sound like home. The smells are gonna smell like home. I remember, and sights and smells can take you back in time, right? It's like a time machine. That's the power of our senses. I remember once, I don't know what I was doing. I mean, it was, not too long ago. I was in my 20s and I smelled something, and it smelled like something that I remember from elementary school. I don't know. It was something from like the cafeteria. Maybe it was like a meal that we had, or even like the smell of like a product. Like they would give us like little toys to count, or, little shapes for like our memory games or whatever we were doing in kindergarten. It took me back to those memories that I didn't even remember that I had. That's the power. And when those memories take you back, they're taking you back to here. They're taking you back to home. When you think about your past, that this is where you come back to. Uh, and that's pretty cool, man, because that can never be taken away from you, right? And even okay, so that's if you grew up here, right? You know, sight smells, right? You know the area, your family's here, but just in general, there's so many reasons to love the valley. I mean, I think of the many hole in the wall types of places to discover. That's fun, man. Like my dad would always tell us, "Oh, I found this hole in the wall little, restaurant. They had the best beans, or man, their tortillas were amazing." That's cool, man. Like that's fun. Like to discover those hole in the wall places that no one really knows about, right? Help spread the word. Not just restaurants, but little businesses that it's a family business. There's only one. It's only on that street in that city, and they happen to have the best blank, right? They make the best this, or they serve the best that. That's fun, man, because that is a part of like our culture, right? Like family local businesses. That's a part of who we are, right? The whole family's coming together, right, to work at this little rinky dinky place, and but there's so much pride in it, right? Like the pride in the hole in the wall. We'll talk about a restaurant, right? That in itself, the term "hole in the wall" is not an insult, right? It's not a euphemism for like a humble place establishment. No, like that's a badge of honor, man, that you have one. So yeah, I love hole in the wall type places like restaurants, man. Like each hole in the wall restaurant is a story to tell, right? Somebody's prized possession that took years to build, right? Hard work, dedication, sweat, tears, literally a lot of the times, man. If I had one, heck, man, I'd be proud of that place. Anybody would be. That's awesome, man. I love trying those places out. Those are the hidden gems to discover, right? Like you can go to a chain and you know what you're getting, right? That's boring, right? But if you go to like a local hole in the wall place that is kind of like out there, like in a suite, nobody, you don't hear a lot of chatter about it. And you go in there and you find something that you love, like, heck yeah, like you discovered that, right? Now you're going to tell your family and your friends, like, you got to try this place. And they're going to be like, what, that place? Like, how long has that been there? No, man, like, it's been there. You just haven't gone. Like, oh, man, that's cool. Like, it's kind of like a treasure hunt, right? I love that stuff. Okay, another reason to love the valley is that okay, life is cheaper here. that's that's true across the board, right? Like, compared to national averages, I mean, my gosh, the price of rent is so much lower here. Salaries are also, lower than national averages, right? You won't get paid as much as you will if you're in California, but you're also not going to have to pay as much for groceries and for healthcare and for living, right? Gas. So that definitely helps. That's a perk, right? If even if you were stuck here in the valley, heck, man, like you're not gonna complain about that part, right? Life is a lot cheaper here. It's not as fast. Oh my gosh, that's a huge one. Like life is slower in the valley, and that's a good thing, right? I mean, think about it. In bigger cities, everyone's kind of chasing that dollar. Everyone's kind of just focused, right? Their minds are just set on one thing. They're walking faster, they're thinking faster, right? They got deadlines, right? They got corporate, you know, breathing down their necks. Um, it's not like that here. Here it's a lot more relaxed. And a lot of that is because it's a more humble environment, right? I mean, to be honest, we live on the poverty line, the most of us do, as a community at or below the poverty line. And it's a more humble means of living. But because of that, it's a lot less stressful. Um, in that respect, right? There's definitely stress that comes with living at or below the poverty line, but life is a lot more relaxed here. It's a lot slower, right? That hustle and bustle, you don't feel it as much as you do in other areas. And if when you are in another environment, right, in a big city, and you come back, maybe you didn't necessarily feel it as much when you were there, but when you come back, you're like, whoa, man, I can breathe a little bit easier now, right? Now I can kind of, relax my shoulders a little bit more. You feel it, like you feel the difference. It's in the air, and that is one of the biggest perks, especially nowadays. How people are focusing more on their mental health, right? On themselves. How society is kind of encouraging us to think more about um, our own well being. Living in a place that's not as fast paced and as money driven is a good thing, right? Because it makes your life a little bit more comfortable. I mean, money isn't everything. It really isn't. Material possessions, financial, those aspirations, that's not everything. And it shows here, right? People are very content. If you look at some of these places, some of the more humble areas of the valley, man, you find people that are smiling, that are proud, of what they have, and it might not be very much, but man, they're proud of it, right? They're not gonna pout about what they don't have, right? They're gonna fight for what they do. And I guess that takes me to another thing that I love about the valley. The people are more resilient. They're definitely more resilient than some of the areas that I've been to just in this state alone. Because if you think about it, in the valley, as generally speaking, a lot of the times our backs are against the wall more so than other populations, right? I mean, people that have made names for themselves, people that have established, their businesses, their livelihoods. A lot of that had to be built from scratch, right? I mean, how many people in the valley grew up, right, inheriting a trust fund, right, driving, a BMW in college, going to college, for one thing. As a valley, as a population, we have it harder. We had it harder, getting started. And man, I that kind of makes me think about this thing in sports, right? I'm gonna just think about football to make it easier, right? Which team is what's more impressive? The team that went undefeated in the season, never had a down moment, never lost, went straight through to the championship, won that Super Bowl, and now they're raising it proud. Or the team that had its moment of failure, right? That team that did have a losing streak or suffered through serious injuries at serious positions, at important positions. Um, Maybe because I'm from here, I hadn't even thought about it that way. But maybe because I am a member of the Rio Grande Valley, I think it's a lot more impressive to watch that team that had all the setbacks to finish strong, to finish on top, to win that championship. That to me is a cooler story, and also because it's more realistic, right? Think about life. I mean, how many people, even if you think about like the richest people in the world, right? When they're giving advice, when they're doing interviews, they always talk about failure. I mean, in real life, you're not gonna have an undefeated season. It doesn't happen that way. That you have to fight, you have to scratch and claw and battle through whatever situations you're facing. But at the end of the day, when you come out on top, man, that feels good. And you see that time and again here in the valley, man. And that's one thing that I mean, at least I don't appreciate as much. And that's part of the reason why we're doing this podcast, right? To kind of be able to sit back and think about that and soak that in a little bit more and be proud of it. The people here are resilient, man. They created their own stories, right? First generation college students, first generation American citizens, for that matter. And man, that doesn't stop them. Think about how many lawyers, doctors there are around here that are homegrown, right? As kids, they were in the fields, they were migrants, immigrants, and now look what they're doing. It's that to me; those are the stories that I want to hear, and I can't wait, man. I can't wait to hear from the people out there that are listening. Like, oh man, that sounds like me. Like, come on, like let's talk about it. Let's hear what it took to get there. That's one of the things that I love about our people here. The Valley has so many inspiring success stories that we cannot wait to hear. Okay, the culture. That's one that cannot be ignored, right? The food, the music, the dance, right? You won't find it anywhere else on this side of the border. The food is a huge one. We'll be honest, a lot of it isn't the most healthy, but it is undeniable, and it is just such a strong part of our culture. Um, the outdoors, my gosh, that's one of my favorite ones about the valley that I didn't always appreciate. I mean, think about think about birding. We'll just take that for example. One thing, birding, right? We have the World Birding Center here in the Rio Grande Valley. There are 9 different locations with over 500 species of birds that you can spot here at home. These this Rio Grande Valley, right? Um, 500 species. Can I name 5 birds that I can spot here in the valley? I don't know. I mean, the different types of kingfishers, all the raptors, the hawks, the green jay. I know that one. And actually, my wife and I have been wanting to do that, more often because it's really relaxing. The birding alone, man, is one of the things that we take for granted. A lot of us here in the valley. Let's be honest. Some of the times that we've gone, like I remember once we were at Benson State Park, and there was somebody there from San Diego. They came here. They came to Mission from California to see the birds. I've lived here my whole life, and that was like my 4th time at Benson State Park. Right? We went the Westlaco, South Padre Island. There, I've seen people that have come from other countries, literally, to see the birds in the Rio Grande Valley, and it's in our backyards. So yeah, the birding is huge here. Ask any winter Texan. Um, we talked about South Padre Island, right? Kayaking, fishing, parasailing, snorkeling is a thing here. We see now that it's becoming more popular. The people riding horses, right? Those groups of the horseback riding on along the beach. That's pretty cool. I've never done it. We've done it in other parts of the state, but not at the island, not on an island, not on a beach. That's cool. That's something to do, on a weekend. Heck, that's a good one. Falcon Dam, the lake out there, right? Some of the best bass fishing. The state parks. Can we name all the state parks here in the valley? What about the the refugees? The regional parks, the city parks, the state parks, hiking and bike trails. I think now we've I personally have been to all the state parks in the valley, but it took, you know, my 26 years of existence. Maybe it took me 24 to say that I've been to all of them, and there's not a whole lot, right? Here in the area. So that's something that, as I got a little bit older, I was able to venture out on my own, and I'm now starting to realize, the beauty of the area. I mean, a sunset and a sunrise off the bay at South Padre Island, is gorgeous. I had never seen it until I was in my 20s. Or maybe I had, but I just hadn't appreciated it. And there's so many places that are waiting to be discovered, right? Like I said, the hike and bike trails. Mission has a good one. Harlingen and Brownsville are full of trails that we recently started checking out, and they're always there. They're waiting for us to go outside. And being outdoors is so good for your well-being, for your mental health, right? Like taking a deep breath outside, hearing the birds chirping, seeing, the clouds, not having to hear sirens, traffic. Think about stuff you got to get done. Like go outside, man. Like let's do ourselves a favor and spend some time in nature, get some sunlight, and it's just so good for you. There are people in other parts of the world, in other parts of the country, that don't have that opportunity to just go outside and within a few minutes worth of driving, they can be in a state park. They can be at a place designated, World Birding Center. I mean, that's pretty neat. We can't deny that is an opportunity that not everybody has. Um, Our proximity to Mexico is another one. This is one that I just recently, working in healthcare, listening to my patients tell me their stories about how they got taken care of, or how long, or why it took so long to have a surgery, or whatever the case may be. They didn't have access to like a doctor here. I started to realize that, man, we have an opportunity to seek healthcare alternatively on the other side of the border, and it's a lot cheaper. I mean, that it doesn't hurt to have that available to you. Like, for example, for myself, I've never gone to the dentist in Mexico. I've never seen a doctor in Mexico, but it's there, right? I mean, you can cross over, go to Reynosa or Matamoros, and man, your medicine's going to be a heck of a lot cheaper and faster too. That's another weird thing. Like, I hear my patients saying that, they went to they crossed on a Saturday and they saw their specialist, and they came back within like a few hours, and they also like had time to get tacos afterwards or whatever the case may be. I'm like, what? Like, I spent 2 hours in the waiting room here to see my doctor, and and that's because I was waiting for like weeks or months for that appointment in the first place. And apparently it's over there, man. Like, you get in and you get out quick, like sometimes without an appointment, and sometimes like you make one a week in advance, right? And 2 weeks from now you're a week into a prescription that you got, from seeing your specialist in Reynosa for like practically nothing compared to the cost of healthcare here in America. I mean, if you were to spend your whole life in the valley and then you move to Wisconsin, you're in Wisconsin for a week, and then you end up with like this terrible pain, and it's one of your molars, right? You got something going on with the tooth. Man, if you don't have insurance, you're gonna wish you had Reynosa a few miles away to just go to a dentist and pay what, like 50, 60 bucks, $100 in total, maybe, I don't know, and get it done quick, versus the new situation that you gotta private pay, however much it's gonna cost just for the visit, and then the x-ray, and then the prescription, and the antibiotics, and maybe an extraction. Oh my gosh. And then you're gonna have to wait for that extraction too, because maybe they don't do it right there and then. In Mexico, apparently, like, it gets done like quick, man. So that's something that, man, like, even if you don't go, it does not hurt to have that available to you. And it's just something that I've recently grown to appreciate, how good we have it. And even other things like tires. Like, when I was going to school, I think I was like in the middle of, I don't know what part of my schooling I was in, but one time when I was in school, I needed a tire like desperately. And I got one for like 40 bucks on the side of the road on Old 83 from one of the, little local tire shops. Like, that's not available everywhere either. And I just hadn't realized it because I've always lived here. But little things like that, man, it's cool. Like, to have those uh, alternative available resources at right in our backyards, man. Um, Another thing, traffic is not as bad here in the valley as it is in other areas. And that's, it's gotten worse. McAllen has become more congested. Hidalgo County, right? Cameron County is not so bad. I mean, if, like, for example, going to the island, um, if you're driving from like Star or Hidalgo County, you realize that once you get to like cities like Harlingen, Brownsville, it gets a lot more relaxed and chilled out. At least that's my experience. But once you hit Mercedes, Westlaco, man, you start feeling like it's getting more congested. And then by the time you're in far, San Juan, McAllen, man, like, traffic is horrible. The expressway. I mean, right now there's construction everywhere. And now I'm dating this session, but the construction is terrible. A lot of my friends don't even get on the expressway at all right now because of that, because of the construction, and just because of like how congested it is. Sometimes it takes longer if you're on the expressway, because then you get stuck, especially when you're like on that interchange. Oh man, it's bad. But it's not as bad as it is in Los Angeles or in Houston. Have you seen the expressway system, the highway system in Houston? Like, Man, I was talking to my wife and a friend of ours yesterday. Like, I respect the kids that are like 16 in Houston learning to drive, like driver's ed. Oh, today, kids, we're gonna learn how to drive on the freeway, on the highway. And they're like going down like I-10. Man, like I would freak out. I'd freak out now driving on the highways in Houston, those roundabouts in Dallas, right? And imagine if you had that as a place to learn. And one thing that our friend mentioned was that like she wishes that she had learned that way so that coming to the valley would be nothing. And that's true. You know, people that had that experience learning to drive in the big cities, I guess they feel that way. Like, man, Hidalgo County is nothing. But for me, I'm like, man, imagine having to learn. Because I think about when I learned and I was kind of nervous, like going down 10th Street, like, oh my gosh, like there's stores everywhere. This is 10th Street. This is like the street. Or like Paredes Line Road. That's where I took. So another thing, a quick fact about myself, I had to take my driver's ed, no, my driving exam 3 times in Brownsville because the place to test here in Hidalgo County was like real booked, like 2-3 months out. So I would schedule in Brownsville. And I remember going down one of those streets in Brownsville and I was like, oh man, like this is the real deal. Man, but that's nothing compared to big city life, man. Like, and you're driving, and the drivers there are like, remember what we talked about? Like, they got money on their minds. Like, they're chasing that dollar. I mean, they're going, you know, 80 miles an hour, whatever. Who cares how fast they're going? But they're driving with a purpose. Like, they don't care who you are. They're gonna fly right by you. So I think that's a little bit more intimidating also. So yeah, traffic is not anywhere near as bad as it is in bigger cities. So that's definitely something to be thankful for living in the Rio Grande Valley. And there's so many reasons, right, to think about when you're talking about why should we love the Rio Grande Valley. There's so many things that we can talk about. And there's a lot of things that I didn't mention because maybe I didn't have those experiences or I just didn't think about them. I mean, you could be talking about this for hours. And I didn't even talk about like attractions, like those reasons to love the valley, because I wanted to go a little bit deeper than that, right? I mean, there are a lot of fun things to do here. And that was not always necessarily the case, but you know, times have changed and our region is growing. Think about SpaceX watching takeoffs. I haven't, man, I want to do that so bad. The thing about that one is that I haven't been able to figure out when the launches are going to be. And they're always like on a Monday or like a Tuesday in the morning. Like I'm at work, like, dang it. But yeah, there's so many things to talk about. And that's the beauty of this conversation. And that's the beauty of this podcast. Like we're going to be diving, more into, the other side of it, right? Like the fun things to do on a weekend. But yeah, there's so many things to love about the Rio Grande Valley, and that's the beauty of this conversation. You could go on, and it will go on and on. That's the purpose of this podcast, right? We're going to be learning more about each other and about things to do. We're going to be discovering more hole in the walls together. Let's make those places shine. That's the goal. We're going to be interacting a lot with you guys more on our stories, on social media. Can't wait to hear from you guys. But thanks for this session here. Reasons to love the Rio Grande Valley, right? Why should you love it? Well, we just talked about a few of them. And hopefully this gets us thinking more about this, right? This podcast is designed to help stimulate our interest in our home so we can get out there and discover the little hidden gems all around us that have been there probably for a while, and we just haven't stepped outside to check them out. So thanks, guys. We'll see you next week. Thanks. Appreciate it. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Don't forget to follow the show on social media for updates on episodes, interactive content, and more opportunities to grow together. We'll see you again next week on your podcast, the Rio Grande Podcast. Stay safe. Take care.